Well, good afternoon. I've been stood here by the kitchen window watching these three little birds, and you see the one on the left. He or she is roosting. It's roosting. It's got its it's moved its head now. But it keeps tucking its little head into its breast, into its wings, and having a wee snooze. And they're all on the bird table. Now, for about the past months, I've been watching little birds like this. Now, not very many of them, just the occasional one. Come to the bird table, eat a little bit of food, and then stay there having a little snooze. Isn't that interesting? I don't think I've ever seen that before with birds. That little one now is going to feed. Isn't it incredible? I've just got my containers out here to give them a bit of a wash because I'm making some juice for myself. There's so much produce around the garden. It just seems sensible, to make juice. I've got a few herbs hanging up there. Most of the herbs that I cut are hanging up in the tunnel. All the spearmint. Because I was looking for mint. I think I went into every health food shop in Sligo and Carrick and all the other shops in between, looking for spearmint tea, dried mint. Couldn't find it. They sold the tea bags, but I'm not comfortable anymore with tea bags. Well, today is Earth Overshoot Day, and it's come 2 months earlier than it came in, I think it was the 1970s. So I'm sure you were all familiar with Earth Overshoot Day, but just been a very interesting interview with the Swiss statistician in charge of collecting all the info to produce the information on this. And it's the same old. We, primarily in the West, are living way above our means. And when I say our means, I'm not talking about the money we have in the bank or don't have in the bank, or the money that we earn or don't earn. It's about what we have in our lives, mass consumption, basically, and consuming an awful lot more than, say, was in vogue when I was a child growing up. So it's been a very interesting day, kind of thinking about all these different things. And of course, today was my washing day. I don't have a particular washing day, but as rain began to fall here, and it's only just mizzle and drizzle at the moment, but there's a promise of rain coming through. I felt it was the right time to use the water in the rain barrel by the barn and do some washing, wash my clothes. So I've got most of them hung up there. I've got a few things which are sort of dripping. I've got a big duvet cover which is dripping there on that chair, and I've got a sheet which is dripping there. And as I was washing clothes, I was just sort of thinking about the way in which most of society lives, because most of society in the West never think about where their water's coming from. Now, because I refused to go on to mains water, well, I couldn't afford it at the time, and I'm not going to bother with it now, and I have a spring well, I am very, very cognizant of how much rain is falling and how dry or how wet the land is. Oh, that's a lovely bird song. And this is the third drought this year. Now imagine that for Ireland. This is the third drought. In other words, there is no water coming from the spring well up on the hill to feed the tank in my loft, because the water levels in the earth itself have got so low. So it seems to me that Ireland is going through a phase which, if it continues, is going to change the sort of makeup of the land here in the west of Ireland. Ireland is going through a drying out period. That year on year, with the exception of, I think it was 2008 when we had massive floods, but year on year there's been more extended periods of drought. And as I said before, most people aren't even aware of that, because as long as the water comes out of the tap, they don't have cause to think about it. And they kind of cling to the old, sayings, oh, it's wet, the Ireland's wet, and, all the jokes around Ireland having too much rain and stuff like that. Those sayings and those jokes are so passé now. Like I say, I speak from experience, and I really do feel that I'm on the front line when it comes to gathering the information about what's happening, because I'm actually living through it. This is all my spearmint up here drying. Must take you on a little walk, actually, just as I talk. I'll walk. I mean, the ground here is exceptionally dry, and has been so since the end of March, beginning of April. It's quite extraordinary. So the dynamics of everyday life are all set to change, and I know last year when Earth Overshoot Day was mentioned in the media, no one here in Ireland paid much attention to it, but I think that there's massive changes coming, massive changes in that people are going to have to face into this, and adaptation isn't difficult. It's not difficult. The Bealtaine project has been about modelling not just a sustainable lifestyle, because sustainable just means keeping the status quo, but a regenerative lifestyle, and trying to live within one's means. And not just fiscally, because money matters, albeit important, are not what life is about. Life is about living with Mother Earth and respecting the resources that she has. And Earth Overshoot Day is about how we have just taken those resources without thinking. We have taken them, we've used them without measuring out. And it's sort of mad, and it's madness, and it's criminal that governments aren't issuing guidelines and talking about this. Because we've already burnt up the resources for this year, and we're not at the beginning of August yet. Lughnasadh is just round the corner, but that's August, September, October, November, December. 5 months. So we're over halfway through the year by a month, and the resources for this year have been used. And of course we'll just keep on keeping on, we'll just keep on the lifestyle that we're used to and not think about it. But that's silly. Because if this was a lifeboat out at sea with so many provisions on it and so many people, and not knowing when we'd hit land, we would organise ourselves to eke out those provisions as minimally as possible. But it seems as though we're just going to keep on partying on down. Party on down until until there's nothing left. It's very irresponsible behaviour. So, of course, it's easy to understand the irresponsible behaviour. And I'll tell you for why. There was an article that I read in the Irish Times, I think it was the Irish Times this morning, and it was basically, it was written by a journalist, I think her name was Anne Mullally, and she was writing that television, media generally, entertainment media, has become, over the years, very dumbed down. And as a consequence, and it's like a direct consequence, our politics has become very dumbed down. So we're not engaging, we're not thinking, we're not having intelligent and intellectual discussions about the pros and cons of anything that's happening, really. This is the kind of general society. And so this, of course, then becomes part of this decreasing sort of a mess that we find ourselves in, that we find ourselves with most inept leaders, most inept politicians who are not addressing the serious issues that should be addressed. Now, reading that, none of that came as a surprise to me, because what's trending today in Ireland, all across Ireland, not just on Twitter, but it's on the radio, I don't have television, so I don't know what's happening there, is this series called Love Island, which I can say something about because I watched one episode of it in Belfast some time ago, and I thought it was the most ridiculous and stupid thing I've ever watched. But apparently it's really popular. It's really popular. I was a member of Netflix for a while, and I had to end my subscription to it because there was very little on there worth watching. It was like banal. banal entertainment. And yes, I can switch off and I can watch, films or television or whatever, but not banal to that extent, where I actually feel insulted with the level of media going on. Anyway, maybe it's just me. I don't know. But I had a garden visitor yesterday, Rosaline. Hi Rosaline, if you're listening. It was lovely to meet you. And Rosaline asked me at one point, she said, we were just talking as we walked around the garden, and she's a local lady, that I said promised a garden visit to, a long, long time ago. And, we were talking about how we live today and the fact that I was living on my own. And I said, actually, Rosaline, I don't know if I like people that much. I prefer the company of animals. I prefer Jack's company. I do miss my cats, and at some point I will get another cat. And I love going out walking with Jack, and I love seeing the cows in the fields, but I do find, and this is just a general statement, I do find people not terribly engaging. Now, of course, I think the people who come to Bealtaine Cottage are different. Because I think that the fact that so many people are thinking on the same wavelength as me, I suppose that's what I find very encouraging. It's just a pity that you were all so scattered across Mother Earth. But, yeah. Anyway, look. You see, my own little spring well down here in the fairy wood, well, up there is the fairy wood, down here just where it borders, it's just a dribble now. You've probably never heard it that low. Still running, but sort of a challenge. I'll just walk down here a little bit. When I was walking down through the woodland here with Rosaline yesterday, I did think to myself, gosh, I need to get down here and do a bit of cutting back. You can see what I mean. We didn't actually come down this far because I said to her that it wasn't viable. What on earth is that? That's a funny looking thing. What on earth is it? It's all black and... How strange. How strange. That's bizarre. Yeah. That tree's got very big now. Lots of honeysuckle hanging down here. So as I was walking around, and I was walking around this morning with my coffee, and I might even make myself a second cup of coffee. I feel like I deserve a treat after all that hand washing. But I noticed a massive amount of tiny mushrooms just hither and thither. Now, I'm kind of looking around. I'm trying to keep an eye on the camera, and I'm looking around at the same time to just show you. Well, we've got those, but they've been on there for some time now. These were small mushrooms. Lots and lots of different little herbs. I think this is self-heal. It's just gone over. There's some more of it there. There's lots of different little flowers and herbs coming up here now. And, I mean, look at this. The pathway is completely grown over with all this fuchsia. There's part of the pathway through there. So there's more of this beautiful self-heal. Isn't that lovely? I can hear bees around the fuchsia. And a lot of the goat willow, you know, this is the original goat willow in what would have been a hedge along here 15 years ago. The goat willow, of course, is a pioneer tree. So it sets the scene for preparing the earth for planting more hardwood trees, if you like, because it grows and then it falls over, and so the wood decays into the earth, if it's allowed to do this, that is, which of course it is here, and so builds up the soil, builds up the quality of the soil, and then you can plant trees in there that need to have a lot more nutrient-rich soil. So this is what's happening now along this old hedgerow, and it's very interesting. And of course I will be getting a handle on it round about November, December, going towards midwinter. It'll be a very good time for logging up some of this, because although it needs a long time to season, it does burn very well. And so just by cutting back some of it, you're going to encourage new growth from the base. So there might be a second growth life in that goat willow. You see how the ground here is lovely and dry and springy. Talking about mushrooms, I can't seem to find them now. Anyway, just keep walking. Here we go, here's some mushrooms. There's some. See? A clear sign of Lughnasadh. This goat willow here is just nothing less than magnificent. I'm hoping it's going to keep standing for another wee while anyway. But at some point it will begin to fall. I think one of the stems on it here is beginning to look that way. It's very majestic though. And this particular stem that's falling is covered with ivy. So it seems to know when it's beginning to die down, and then the ivy takes over it. And no, there's no poison ivy here in Ireland. This is that beautiful ivy, you know, the holly and the ivy. And all these lovely big long loops of it, look. That's going to be lovely on midwinter wreaths. Let me look at the time on here, 23:42. Okay. I'm going to walk up this way now. And even along this path there's a lot of cutting back to do. I could really do with some help. I often think this, and then I find myself on a day when I just get stuck in and I get so much accomplished that I think, oh no, I don't need any help. It is, of course, without doubt now, a woodland. It's a beautiful woodland. mean, Rosaline said to me yesterday, did you have a plan, Colette? I think most people ask me that. Did I have a plan? And my plan was such a big picture in my head that there was no way I could have sat down to draw it, and I was too busy putting it into place. And the plan was simply thus. If I had have had a lot of money, I would have bought a cottage in a woodland. I didn't have money. I borrowed heavily from the bank to buy Bealtaine a cottage, and so I planted a woodland around it. And there is a massive amount of hope now in this woodland. A massive amount of hope, because people can see it was one woman who did all this. They can also see that this is no more than 15 years old, and yet we're looking at a semi-mature woodland where the actual earth itself has changed from rushy barrenness to woody fertility. Then I was looking at the ash trees. The ash trees on the outside of the 3 acres, many of them have been attacked by the Chalara. But then I look at little ash trees like this, look, which is very well protected inside the woodland, and it's very healthy. So it would seem that the less exposed and the more protected the ash trees are, the less chance they have of getting the Chalara. And then, of course, it would depend on how long the Chalara is going to be hanging around for, because it's got to have some kind of a shelf life, you know. So that's interesting. And remember when I planted these little trees here? 7 trees in total. So 6 birch and 1 beech. They've come on remarkably well. I'm delighted with the growth on those. And I'm just, by walking the area, making a little path up through them. So, on this note, I'm going to finish and upload my video. And just to say blessings to you all. My thoughts on this Monday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of today. And definitely enjoy the week ahead. I'll certainly be a lot happier when the heavens opens up and there's massive rainfall. Blessings to you all.